got to keep doing these promos at the start of AEW Collision. I mean, it's like they just came from the 80s. You get all this 80s music. It's kind of got like some synth to it. And it was everybody talking about the Owen Cup tournament when we cut to the music of Elton John. I mean, that is tremendous. Also, hello, my friends, and welcome to Monday morning, which is when we are upping those downs for Collision. I said Monday morning. It's Monday morning for me, but it will probably be the afternoon for you. Hell, maybe it's 2028 and wrestling is dead. While I'd be very sad, at least those crazies on social media would have to go away. Let's up those downs. Collision also started silly, and I like silly. Because here came MJF, the AEW World Champion, to prove that he can work more than one show, although he was taking on Kip Morris. And no, you're not meant to know who this local hometown boy was, but of course Maxwell Jacob Friedman got in there, he hit the Heat Seeker, and he applied the crossface, which is quite the choice, and he got the tap-out win. This honestly went about 32 seconds. As it turned out, this was a ruse because, man, what came after this? Because Maxwell was all like, well, I just did away with this guy, so I wouldn't mind fighting somebody else from Hamilton. When a very heavy-set gentleman started to make his way to the ring, when from nowhere, poof, here was Ethan Page. He said, wait a minute, dude. I'm going to go to the ring, and I'm talking to this idiot. Now, of course, he is from the area as well. The first thing he did was slap the microphone out of Friedman's hand, and then he cut this promo, and my word. I don't know if we have turned Ethan Page babyface, but if we haven't, what are we doing? We should have done it yesterday. He also tied it into how his father had grown up in the area and the success that he had had, and that people like MJF are nothing at goobers, which is why he wants to have a world title match right now, and MJF actually said yes. Plug me in, I'm ready to go. I think he must have panicked a little bit too because he went after Ethan's leg and this affected Page throughout the whole match, and at one point, Maxwell even applied the half Boston crab. He's not even from Boston. Page eventually was able to bust out a cutter because it is 2023 wrestling, but even when he hit a clothesline, he was like, oh, my leg, it's really hurting me. That's why he's a damn hero, because he was fighting from underneath. He scored with the iconoclasm for a near fall, but when MJF got out of the ego's edge, he actually hit the twist of fate. I was like, I must be friends with Matt Hardy now. Ethan then went up top, so of course Maxwell crotched him, which meant his penis was hurting, but even then, Page was able to get him and he hit this avalanche power slam. And we kind of got this scenario, and we're going to talk about this later too, when even though you didn't think that Ethan Page was going to win, it just did something deep down in your tum-tum. And of course, when he eventually went to hit his finisher, his leg went out completely, so MJF was all like, ha 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 ha, as if it was M. Bison. He hit the Heat Seeker, and he retained his championship. Man, we got to do more stuff like this. All of a sudden, we have built a platform for Ethan Page, and now we have to build him a house. I don't know what that means, but I'm giving it up. Which is when we did keep the matches going, because it was the Owen Hart Cup tournament. It was Dustin Rhodes versus Powerhouse Hobbs. QTV were out with their boy too, so you just knew that shenanigans were coming. And this Dustin's Rhodes man, he somehow becomes a better wrestler the older he gets. And in many ways, that doesn't make any sense. And of course, eventually QT Marshall tripped Dustin. When he was then thrown to the outside, QT was back. And you already know what he did. He utilized the wrestling ring, and he threw him into the ring post. This meant that Rhodes was bleeding, which I did think was a little bit unnecessary for a random episode of Collision. And after Powerhouse had powered through him for a while, do you know what Dustin did? He hit the crossroads. He knows what he's doing. He also hit a pile driver, which Hobbs kicked out of, which he did again after he was pile driven. So once again, we're trying to sell the Powerhouse as, oh my gosh, he can't be stopped. When, of course, QTV started to get involved again. They were casting more distractions, so Rhodes went and thumped QT, who took the funniest and kind of most terrifying bump you ever saw, when Powerhouse Hobbs busted his spine with the spine buster, and kind of amazingly, Dustin Rhodes kicked out. Like it was WrestleMania. Even better too, he kicked out at 1. So mark your calendars. What is it? 3rd of July, 2023. I'm going to tell you this. In 6 months' time, everyone's going to be kicking out at 1. You can just tell it's becoming a thing. It's the new super kick. Now, once again, I don't think anybody in the world actually thought the Powerhouse was going to lose here. Once again, set your clocks because we are going to talk about it. So after he had shoved Dustin Rhodes into QT Marshall, who was being a dick, he hit the spine buster for the second time. And he wasn't going to fail then. 1, 2, 3. This was smart too, because it reminds you that QTV are assholes. You don't know what they're going to do. And also, it has set up Powerhouse Hobbs versus Ricky Starks for the next round. And of course, that ties in up when Miro defeated Anthony Henry. Damn right. Now, it did get a few minutes, but this was basically a squash. And even though Henry kind of pounded Miro in the head for a little bit, Miro's like, do you not understand my character? I've just given up everything in my life, including my wife, so now I'm going to kill you. Also, that rhymed. So eventually he did return with the matchstick kick and he applied the game over submission and he got the tap out win. And all I'll say is this, I kind of stood there going, well, I'm sure somebody will attack Miro now and we'll get into his first feud. But we didn't do it. But I do kind of feel like we need to pull that trigger soon, because again, you just want to stack Collision as much as you can to get people watching. But honestly, I'm just happy this guy's back. I love him so much. My heart beats for thee. I'm giving it up. We then had this interview with Bullet Club Gold hosted by Tony Schiavone, and essentially we told everyone, oh hey, can you see that the Gun Club are here? Well, they're standing with us because they are now officially in the group. Good for them. Austin and Colton said that they made this jump because, of course, Jay White and Juice Robinson have all the experience in the world, so they can learn from them. When they started to go through a list of people they've beaten recently, including CM Punk. Tony Schiavone was then the bearer of bad news because he was like, you know that Juice Robinson has that match with Ricky Starks later. Well, you're all banned from ringside. They all melted down because they were sad pandas. Jay White then took the microphone though, and I tell you, this guy is so damn good, because not only did he tell Tone, you're banned from talking, he then just fired shots, obviously, at everybody, including saying to CM Punk, hey Punk, what's in that bag? Maybe I want some of it. Which did sound a little bit like a euphemism. They also yelled at FTR because they won a tag team title match, and on Dynamite we are going to get a tag team eliminator. So we were putting in all slots here. It was like reverse Jenga. We actually did get a rebuttal from FTR, Ricky Starks and CM Punk here because they magically appeared on the big screen, and Punk once again was talking about his bag. It sounds so dodgy, but this time he was like, well, if you want what's in this bag, why don't you order a replica title and then you can be like Maxwell Jacob Friedman. So once again, we are planting some seeds. This is when FTR accepted the challenge and Ricky Starks was like, oh, I will win the Owen Hart Cup tournament, but I tell you this feud is actually pretty good. I mean, it's got me massively interested. You can kind of see we're going to go off in many directions. And maybe it was a little bit long, I understand that, but it just felt like Switchblade was about to start climbing the ladder. Honestly, guys, so damn good. And given that we had just had that big chat as well, it's time for Owen Hart Cup match 2. It was Juice Robinson versus Ricky Starks. This was good as well because it tied into the other narrative that's been going on for a while, because Ricky doesn't like Juice and Juice doesn't like Ricky, so now they can punch each other in the face. They began with some wrestling because they are wrestlers, and clearly Robinson hadn't been watching the rest of the show, or maybe he had, because he started to work over Ricky Starks' leg. And I was like, what is your problem, guys? Do you not understand that these are walking devices and they're very important? But he literally threw these into the ropes at one point, which looked gnarly. And because Juice was kicking his ass so much, Nigel McGuinness on commentary was like, just stop it. Stop the match. He can't take it anymore. And I was like, Nigel, I watched you get absolutely decimated back in the day. Can you imagine if an official stopped the thing? You'd be so mad. Also, Nigel McGuinness isn't there. Ricky must have heard this because he hit a DDT and all of a sudden the comeback was back on. But then Juice hit a DDT, so Ricky Starks hit a DDT. So Juice decided to hit a DDT. If you went really quiet somewhere, Jake Roberts was just freaking out. Eventually, Juice got bored of all this, so he went for the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up. But amazingly, he failed. So I'm like, what kind of wrestler are you? You can't even make it work. This turned out to be true too, because after Ricky Starks had hit his spear and he went for the Rochambeau, Juice basically went for it again. Rick realized he wasn't going to get it, so he reversed it, and he hit the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up. But this time, he got the 3. He's going to the next round. So bring it down, there is the surprise roll-up counter, and of course it goes up by 1. That's over both AEW and WWE if you are new. And afterwards, Bullet Club Gold surrounded the ring, which meant out came CM Punk and out came FTR to balance the numbers. And yes, CM Punk got a little bit of boos, and he got a little bit of cheers. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that he feels like a star. It was a good match. However, I have a counterpoint. Because much like we talked about on WWE Raw ups and downs recently, to tie into my counter, all of a sudden it does feel like wrestling has taken a few steps back. We are massively over-relying on the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. Like, I get it's the most devastating, but sometimes it is okay to have a winner and a loser, and the loser just to be like, well, it wasn't my night. That's even more important when you have a tournament, and I know we can all go, Simon, there still was a winner and a loser, and it's true, but we all know what a surprise roll-up means. It's why I take the mick out of it. It's kind of when you're going over a tightrope and you want to be careful. So given that, down. We then had a quick interview with Christian Cage, who had Luchasaurus behind him. At one point literally went, bah. So that made me laugh when they got interrupted by another hometown boy. It was Shawn Spears. Now this was really good because he was like, Luchasaurus, I understand you're a dinosaur, but can't you see what's going on here? But clearly he can't, because he wanted a TNT title shot, so who accepted? Christian, as if he was the champion. So I love this feud, I love this story. In many ways, it is goofy wrestling for life. Also, this does make sense as well if you are Cage. Like, unless you speak dinosaur, how are you going to be able to converse with Luchasaurus? Unless, of course, you've seen Jurassic Park 3. Isn't that right, Alan? And speaking of championships of this ilk, we then had a TBS title match. It was Kris Statlander versus Lady Frost. It was alright. What I really didn't understand is to begin with, Frost decided, I'll show you. I'm just gonna cartwheel and flippy-dippy-doo-dah around the place. And look, I did enjoy it for what it was, but it was very, very strange. The thing is, she is very good at it, and man, she's so damn graceful, but Statlander got a bit bored of it after a while, so she smacked her. When Milady came back with this German suplex, I tell you, she absolutely crushed her. Kris then went for the tombstone, but Lady Frost was able to hit a DDT instead, and I was like, honestly, if a move was sponsoring this week's episode of AEW Collision, it would be sponsored by the DDT. Once again, Jake would be like, oh my gosh. Lady's plan was still to dance around the place a little bit, so eventually Statlander just whacked her with a line when she hit the Saturday Night Fever for the 1, 2, 3, and she is still your TBS champion. Now, once again, just to keep repeating myself, it would be nice if you had a proper feud soon so we can cut some promos and we can have some depth to the whole thing. I thought this was alright. But it does tie into this thing that I've been teasing the whole time, because once again, I watched this entire match going, well, there is no way that Lady Frost is going to win here. And a major reason for that is because we didn't have any build. Because when you do give someone a microphone, you can start convincing the audience, well, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm not 100% sure. But given that this was the third match of the evening where I felt the same, although again, I would give the opener a pass because we did let Ethan Page cut a promo, I am going to give it a down. It's alright if you just do one, but when you do indeed get to the third thing, well, it just takes something away from proceedings. Which is when Lexi Nair was chatting to Andrade. He wasn't happy. Apparently the House of Black has stolen his mask, so he was like, listen, House of Black, you better return my mask. When the House of Black turned up on the TV, they said, no, we're not going to return your mask. I was shocked. Actually, that's not true because Malachi Black did say he'd give it back to him in good time, but this is obviously the continuation of the feud, and the big question is, who can Mr. Tranquilo get to be his two buddies? I suppose it could be Rush and Vikingo. I mean, that would make sense, but at the moment, he is a massive loner. Which is when we got to our main event, and I will say, I enjoyed the fact that this was a very match-heavy show. But it was Samoa Joe taking on Roderick Strong in the Owen Hart Cup tournament, and I loved what we did here. We all know that Roderick Strong, generic white guy, is a really good wrestler, but we sold Samoa Joe as the biggest beast of all time. So Roddy just tried to get him down and even tried to inflict kind of pain, and Samoa Joe was like, I'm the end-of-level boss, and you can't kill me. It was so good as well, because what Strong would do would go strike, 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 when Samoa would just go wallop, and Roderick went down right away. And they were doing this in the ring, and they was doing this on the outside, and all it did was tell me, who on earth can beat Samoa Joe? And the answer in a week or so is going to be CM Punk. We'll get to it. I mean, even when Strong ran at Joe, he just grabbed him and urinagate his ass. And once again, this tied into the whole structure. You go for a move, you get thumped. You go for a move, oh dear, you got thumped again. But I really do love it when it's a singular big man slapping man meat, so I was into this. As I was, given that CM Punk was on commentary, where I swear he said, if you watch Collision, you are a collider. So I will take that, collider my ass. What? All of this teasing eventually paid off as well because Roderick Strong went to the middle rope and he hit this second rope drop kick to get Samoa Joe down. And then he picked him up and basically gave him an Olympic slam, which just meant it meant all the more. For some reason, it also meant that Roderick thought that Joe was done. So he went for this suplex and Samoa's like, no, you're not doing that. He did this great transition into the Coquina clutch instead. As I told you before, you can't breathe, you're gonna die. When the referee sees you're about to die and you go to sleep, he calls it, Samoa Joe wins. Had a really cool ending too, because Punk looked at Joe and Joe looked at Punk, which means this is super serious. As Nigel McGuinness reminded us, oh, don't forget CM Punk has never beaten Samoa Joe. When Samoa got a chair, put it in the ring, and he picked up Roderick Strong, and he slammed his head into it essentially, meaning the last few minutes of Collision were local medical facility people coming out, putting a collar on Roderick Strong, and wheeling him to the back. I mean, Adam Cole was even here worried about his friend. So I suppose it was done to make you think, oh my gosh, what if he does the same to CM Punk? This kind of ties into other things I am going to say, but what a world we are living in. When the next 7 or 14 days, whenever it's going down, we get CM Punk versus Samoa Joe for the first time in what, like 20 years, 15 years, 18 years? Point is, it's a long time. When they fought the last time, I was but a fetus, so all of this worked, and it sets up the future. Giving it an up. And that really does come down to the fact that sometimes the obvious stuff is the best, and I am going to give Collision an up. And people just want to tweet me all the time going, Simon, I can't believe the ratings. I don't care about TV ratings. I've got real problems to worry about. I don't care what the numbers are. Also, please do let me know down below what you did indeed think about Collision. There's a comment box for just that. And look, kablam! There's an ups and downs video on the screen for Money in the Bank, where you can see me run wild in London. A lot of you will enjoy it, and a lot of you will get super mad. You can also go to whatculture.com to keep up to date with all the latest wrestling news and social media at Simon316 and at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. We have a long old week of ups and downs ahead of us, but I will watch wrestling so you don't have to.